The moment when truth, once buried under decades of NDAs, sealed settlements, and power-fueled suppression, finally claws its way into the daylight, and PamelaWarner, no longer trembling, no longer just a mother in mourning, has become the beating heart of a national reckoning that refuses to be silenced. And now the machine that once consumed her son is cracking from within. Because whistleblowers who were once too scared to speak are now sending emails in the dead of night. Anonymous flash drives are showing up at the doors of independent journalists. And people who once stood on the sidelines are stepping into the arena because they finally understand what Malcolm knew all along. Silence isn't peace, it's a weapon, and in the days following the second leak, titled simply Buried, the dam fully collapses as redacted names are unmasked, studio heads are subpoenaed, and that final file, the one Pamela had held onto like a rosary of grief, is now released to the world, not as a final farewell, but as Malcolm's last stand. And in that final video, labeled For When They Doubt, he doesn't beg for sympathy, doesn't curse the system. He simply tells the story from the beginning, calmly, methodically, with timestamps, dates, codenames, receipts, connecting the dots not just between himself and Cosby, but between a wider web, a shadow network of enablers, fixers, and silent watchers who did nothing, who watched the headlines roll in and said nothing, who witnessed a boy become a casualty and shrugged because the machine had to keep turning, and now the names in red ink are not just one, but dozens. Producers, executives, legacy PR moguls, and what rattles the public most isn't just the proof of criminal cover-ups, it's the consistency. Every file Malcolm left matches other testimony, every timeline intersects, every bribe confirmed, every threat repeated across voices that never knew each other, all pointing to the same machinery of erasure. And as grand jury whispers swirl and congressional committees quietly request access to Pamela's sealed deposition, the world shifts again, because now this isn't just a case study in celebrity corruption, it's a template for how truth dies, and more importantly, how it can live again. And meanwhile, Pamela hasn't stopped. She's on no talk shows, gives no glamour interviews, but she speaks at survivor summits, lectures at law schools, and every time she opens Malcolm's notebook, now laminated and preserved, she reminds her audience of the line he wrote in red ink across the top of every page. They can kill the messenger, but not the message. And now the message has taken on a life of its own, with college campuses staging 48-hour sit-ins, naming them the Malcolm Vigils, with students refusing to speak, symbolically embodying the silence he fought to break. And yet the deeper Pamela goes, the more chilling the discoveries, because one newly uncovered file from the hard drive marked Buried contains a document titled Contingency B Protocol, outlining what to do if Subject W, Warner leaks, steps including discredit via controlled tabloid scandal, initiate mental health narrative, and if that fails, the final line, accidental isolation and neutralization via offshore incident. And now it's undeniable. They planned this, orchestrated it, timed it down to the minute, and all the while the media called it a freak accident, a tragedy, a private moment of grief. But Pamela knows better, and now the world does too. And in a shocking twist, one of the anonymous sources who aided the leak comes forward, not by name, but by action, posting a voice recording of an emergency meeting held just days before Malcolm's death, a conversation between three high-level executives discussing the Warner situation, panicking over footage he was threatening to release, and one voice, clear and calm, says, "Then make sure it doesn't see the light. Do what we did in '97. And just like that, journalists dig into that year, discovering a buried settlement involving another child star, another near expose, another fire smothered before it caught flame. And Malcolm must have found that connection too, because another file in the Shadow Network archive contains a spreadsheet titled Parallels, listing victims, dates, handlers, PR spin cycles, and patterns that repeat every 6 to 8 years. Enough time for public memory to fade, for new victims to emerge, and new cover-ups to be constructed. And Pamela now understands. This wasn't just about her son, it was about a cycle, a system designed to reset itself with every scandal, every death, every vanishing, and Malcolm tried to interrupt that cycle and paid for it. And yet, from his grave, he is still interrupting it. because now, in addition to federal probes, a civil suit has been filed by a group of anonymous victims who name Cosby. Yes, but also networks, publishers, legal firms, and even a university, claiming systemic complicity in maintaining the silence and at the CIA. And just when PamelaWarner thought she had seen the darkest shade of deception Hollywood could throw at her, a knock at the door shattered her 4 a.m. Silence, not the ghost of her son, not the memory of his laughter echoing in the hallways, but a trembling courier, shaking, pale and barely able to make eye contact, who handed her a brown padded envelope with no return address and eyes screaming the truth he could never say aloud. Inside was a thumb drive. No name, no label. Just a single word scribbled in Sharpie. Run. Her hand shook as she placed it into her laptop, praying this wasn't another dead end, another internet hoax, another sick twist in the circus of grief she'd been forced to live inside. The screen flickered, and then came grainy, time-stamped security footage dated 2 nights before Malcolm's body was found. There he was, alive, sitting in a studio parking lot, arguing violently with someone just out of frame, until a shadowy figure stepped forward, and her heart shattered again because she recognized the gait, the arrogance, the hand gestures of Bill Cosby. No sound, just grainy images. But her mother's eyes didn't lie. Cosby grabbed Malcolm by the collar, shoved him hard against a black SUV, then stormed off. 2 minutes later, Malcolm doubled over in pain, clutching his stomach, stumbling as if something had been injected, not punched, and collapsed. The timestamp stopped. The file ended. Pamela screamed. This was no accident. This wasn't drowning. This was a setup. And she wasn't the only one who knew, because inside the same envelope was a list of 14 names, all marked with red X's except 3, all known Cosby whistleblowers. And her name was on it. So was Keshia Knight Pulliam's. And the third name was a dead producer whose body was found in a suicide 2 weeks prior. Pamela's blood turned to ice. She was being hunted. Every visit to the police had been a joke. Every forensic lab suddenly had missing samples. The tabloids had quietly begun to label her the unstable, grieving mother, all part of the smear campaign to make her look crazy before she ever got the chance to speak. But now she had proof. Real proof. Proof that could burn an empire to the ground. So she drove. Middle of the night, 32 hours without sleep, no food, just rage and grief in her tank. She drove to Keshia's gated home, banged on the door like a woman possessed until the frightened actress opened it in a robe. "They killed him," Pamela whispered. "They killed your brother, and I can prove it." Keshia collapsed into her arms, screaming, sobbing, because deep down she had always known. But seeing that footage broke her soul open. They stayed up all night plotting. What would they do with the footage? Who could they trust? Tyler Perry? Oprah? Or would they get burned too? Behind the Curtain was supposed to be Malcolm's documentary, exposing the cost of black brilliance in a white-run Hollywood. The footage had been scrubbed. But Keshia had kept a backup, a hard drive hidden in a children's DVD case inside her daughter's toy chest, because she had always feared this day might come. And now that footage, plus the new surveillance clip, created a mosaic of murder. But before they could move, the internet exploded. TMZ leaked an anonymous tip that PamelaWarner had been bribing tabloid journalists to frame Cosby. Paparazzi stormed her front yard. Her bank account froze. Death threats flooded her phone. And then came the worst blow of all, a subpoena accusing her of tampering with evidence in a closed case. They were turning the gun back on her. And still, somewhere in her bones, she knew this went higher than Cosby. She remembered something. Something Malcolm had said the last time she hugged him goodbye. "Mama, if anything happens to me, go to Jalil. He knows where the bodies are buried, but you might not survive the truth." Jalil White, the man America knew as Steve Urkel. The man who had ghosted Malcolm for nearly a decade, then quietly reappeared at his funeral looking half dead himself. A man with something to hide. Pamela didn't hesitate. She booked a flight to Atlanta, where Jalil now lived off the grid in a strange paranoid compound with private security and surveillance towers. But when she arrived, she found him already waiting for her at the gate, sweating, chain-smoking, and shaking like he'd seen a ghost. "I thought you'd come eventually," he muttered. "You have no idea what he got into. None of us are safe anymore. Malcolm found something he shouldn't have. He recorded everything, and they want it buried. They'll kill you too." She grabbed him by the collar. "Tell me what he found, Jalil. Tell me what they did to my son." And Jalil, broken, weeping, handed her a second USB drive wrapped in tinfoil. "He gave this to me the night before he died, told me to run. I've been hiding ever since." Inside were hours of Malcolm's own voice, private journal entries, hidden camera confessions. And in that moment, as the light snapped off and the world outside her window whispered death, PamelaWarner no longer felt like a grieving mother. She felt like a soldier. The kind of mother who refused to let her child's name fade beneath headlines of lies. The kind who would die with his secrets clenched in her fist if it meant exposing the filth beneath Hollywood's billion-dollar grin. The bat trembled in her hand, not from fear but from rage. A mother's rage, the kind that turned women into warriors, into vigilantes, into hurricanes that even God couldn't tame. Beside her, Keshia clutched her daughter with one arm and her phone with the other, praying for a signal that never came. The house creaked. Footsteps on gravel. A figure outside the door. But Pamela flung it open before they could knock, bat raised, fury loaded. And standing there wasn't a hitman, but Tyler Perry, out of breath, soaked in sweat. "They're coming for you," he gasped. "I got a tip from inside the studio. There's a silencing order on your name. Cosby isn't acting alone. You're not just fighting him, you're fighting a machine." Pamela pulled him inside, slammed the door, and showed him everything. The footage, the envelope, the tapes, the drive, the names. Tyler's hands trembled as he watched Malcolm's face flicker on the screen. "My God," he whispered. He knew everything, and he tried to warn us." Pamela turned to him, eyes blazing. "Then help me finish what he started." Tyler didn't hesitate. He summoned his private team of techs, flew in a media forensics analyst, and converted his Atlanta compound into a digital war room. Meanwhile, Keshia went underground with her daughter, moving between Airbnbs every 2 nights, while Jalil White, paranoid and drunk, began recording a confessional podcast he never intended to release, but Pamela insisted otherwise. "We release it all. Every ugly word, every name, even yours, if you were complicit." Jalil sobbed but agreed. Guilt was an anchor he'd carried too long. But the deeper they went into Malcolm's files, the darker it got. NDAs from child actors' parents, hidden settlements from studio execs, off-the-record interviews with actresses who disappeared before their shows were renewed, and a series of black-and-white photos showing Malcolm's bruised face after a car accident in 2021, an accident he never reported. Each file told a story, and every story ended in silence. Pamela catalogued every image, every clip, with the precision of a coroner, preparing for autopsy not of a body, but of an industry. But Hollywood struck back. Media outlets began running headlines. PamelaWarner, grieving mother or manipulative liar? Anonymous former friends claimed she was exploiting her son's death for attention. The Cosby legal team leaked letters allegedly from Malcolm praising Bill as a mentor. Deepfakes, fabricated texts, stolen medical records claiming Malcolm had a history of mental illness. They were rewriting his legacy in real time. But Pamela had learned, never beg for the truth, drag it into the light. So she called the one woman even Hollywood feared, Monique. And when Monique saw the footage, she wept, then said only 3 words. "Let's burn it." Together, they planned a livestream event unlike anything ever attempted. Not through major platforms, not YouTube, not Instagram. Those could be blocked. They would use a decentralized livestream protocol, untraceable, unblockable. A rogue network of whistleblowers, ex-journalists, and blacklisted editors joined in.